Pickett's charge was an infantry assault ordered by Confederate Robert E. Lee against Major General George G. Meade's Union's position on Cemetery Ridge on July 3, 1863, the last day of the Battle of Gettysburg during the American Civil War. The infantry assault was preceded by massive artillery bombardment that was meant to soften up the Union defense and silence its artillery, but it was largely ineffective. Approximately 12,500 men and 9 infantry brigades advanced over open fields for 3/4 of a mile under heavy Union rifle and artillery fire. On the day of Pickett's charge, the day was hot, nearly about 90 degrees, according to one account of the soldiers. The Confederates sat and baked in the hot sun and suffered Union counterfire as they awaited the order to advance. The infantry charge was preceded by what General Lee thought would have been a powerful and well-concentrated cannonade of the Union center, destroying the Union artillery batteries that could defeat the assault and ruin the Union infantry. But a duo of inept artillery leadership and defective equipment doomed the barrage from the beginning. Longstreet's artillery chief, Edward Porter Alexander, had effective command of the field. Lee's artillery chief, General William N. Pendleton, played a small role then to obstruct the effective placement of artillery from the 2 other corporals. Despite Alexander's efforts, then, there was an insufficient concentration of Confederate fire on the objective. When the Union cannon controllers overshot their targets, they often hit the massed infantry that was waiting and hiding in the woods of Cemetery Ridge or in the shallow depressions just behind Alexander's guns, causing mass kills and casualties long before the battle had even begun. Although some Confederates were able to breach the low stone wall that shielded many of the Union defenders, they could not maintain their hold and were repulsed with over 50% casualties, a decisive defeat that ended the 3-day battle with Lee's campaign into Pennsylvania. General Armistead led his brigade from the front, charging forward with his hat on the tip of his sword. He crossed the wall and was shot 3 times. None of the wounds were expected to be too serious. They assumed that a full recovery would be expected. However, the general died 41 hours later, suffering from things such as exhaustion, anxiety, fever, and probably some damage of infection from the wounds. Years later, when asked why his charge at Gettysburg failed, General Pickett replied, "I've always thought the Yankees had something to do with it." The aftermath of Pickett's charge included a 50% casualty rate for the Confederates. This charge, led by Robert E. Lee, was highly ineffective because of their loss of men and all of the things that it did not do for them. In Pickett's division, 26 out of the 40 field-grade officers were casualties. 12 were killed or seriously wounded, 9 were less seriously wounded, 4 were wounded and captured, and 1 was captured. All of Pickett's brigade commanders fell. Kemper was wounded heavily and was captured by Union soldiers, but then was rescued, and then was captured again during the retreat to Virginia. Garnett and Armistead, the 2 well-known generals, were killed. Before Garnett was killed, he had a previous leg injury and rode his horse during the charge, despite knowing that riding a horse into enemy charge would mean certain death or capture. Armistead, who was known for leading his brigade with his hat on his sword, made it farthest through the Union lines. Overall, Pickett's charge was a death token to the Confederate side. They lost many soldiers due to General Robert E. Lee's bad call to launch the attack. A very important quote from this battle was said by General Evander M. Law. The cannonade in the center presented one of the most magnificent battle scenes witnessed during the war. Looking up the valley towards Gettysburg, the hills on either side were capped with crowns of flame and smoke, as 300 guns, about equally divided between the 2 ridges, vomited their iron hail upon each other. The aftermath of Pickett's charge was much worse on the Confederate side than it was on the Union side. Many soldiers had suffered from gunshot or blast wounds and later died from infection or disease. Overall, Pickett's charge was a battle ordered by Robert E. Lee that was a huge failure for the Confederate side.